Here we are putting our lives on the line to go through Kinnor in Himachal Pradesh on one of the most dangerous roads in the entire country. And our constant companion through the 300-kilometer journey from Shimla to Nako, high up on the mountains, is the tremendous rapid Himalayan rivers, namely the mighty Satluj and its tributary Spiti. Traveling through any part of the Himalayas, you can find an abundance of rivers, both snowmelt and rain-fed, providing water to the billions of Indians who depend on these. Truly, India is blessed to have such repositories of perennial water supply. But not everything is as it seems, and as I soon found out, having these rivers is also a double-edged sword. Welcome back to our channel. Last monsoon, we took a long and slow trip through the high passes of Himachal Pradesh, following the course of the Satluj and Spiti rivers. And one thing I heard from the locals is the speed with which new construction projects are taking place. And I noticed that for myself too. With every turn of the road, new dams and hydroelectric projects can be seen. But if I remember correctly from geography lessons, a major part of these rivers are not even in India, but in Pakistan. So how is it that one country can heavily exploit international rivers without geopolitical consequences? After all, crores of people depend on these across various state and international borders, and whoever controls the rivers can dictate the terms of geopolitics of the region. Known as the Water Tower of Asia, the Tibetan Plateau is the source of rivers on which nearly half of the world's population depend, and many major Himalayan rivers, including the Satluj and Indus, originate in Tibet, and most of the rivers of the Indus River system first flow through India through the regions of Ladakh, Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh and Punjab before entering Pakistan. But why is it that even though India and Pakistan are not at good terms ever since their independence, the waters of these rivers keep flowing? It is obviously in India's best interest to dam up as much of the water as possible, and Pakistan, being a downstream country, cannot take any non-violent action against it. And it is obviously in your best interest to click the like button to see more videos from us. The answer to this question is one of the biggest diplomatic achievements of bilateral agreement between India and Pakistan. Nearly 10 years in the making, the Indus Water Treaty of 1960 is a diplomatic milestone and the only bilateral treaty that stood the test of time through multiple wars. Brokered by the World Bank, the treaty states that India has the right to utilize the waters of the three eastern rivers, that is Beas, Ravi and Satluj, with a combined annual flow of 33 million acre-feet for any use, which includes irrigation, stored hydropower, aquaculture and construction. Whereas the three western rivers, that is Indus, Chenab and Jhelum, and their tributaries, with an annual estimated flow of 80 million acre-feet, belongs to Pakistan. The treaty took many years of discussion and deliberation. As Pakistan pointed out, they have historical precedent of using all the river's waters, whereas India, with an advantageous upstream position, did not acknowledge the water rights. Thus the final treaty is worded to appease both sides, as India got more water as part of the deal than Pakistan wanted, and Pakistan received money from the World Bank to make new irrigation channels. A major geopolitical victory for India from this treaty comes from the fact that this treaty is entirely based on the part of the rivers flowing through India, and thus in times of armed conflict, if Pakistan were to target Indian infrastructure, it will immediately result in abrogation and give India an excuse to dam up the western rivers. Thus, through two great wars, one in which Pakistan lost literally half of its population, they did not dare attack Indian infrastructure in this region. All this being said, we cannot ignore the elephant in the room, or rather, the Red Dragon. The Chinese invasion of Tibet of 1950 was not only a political move, but also a clever geographic importance. Just as India can project power over Pakistan through the rivers, China effectively can boss around the entirety of South and Southeast Asia. The speed with which China is damming up its rivers are completely unprecedented, and this is only set to increase with the increase in urbanization and energy demands of the country. With a projected urban population of over 1 billion by 2030, it is surely going to put pressure on the downstream countries which are going through population boom and rapid urbanization themselves. So far, China has been concentrating on the eastern rivers, which are closer to its population centers, including the Brahmaputra, which may lead to severe floods and droughts throughout Bangladesh and Northeast India. But that is a story for a different video. The Indus River system is so far relatively untouched by China, which experts think are an assurance to its friend Pakistan. But with increasing demand for electricity and irrigation, and the fact that it may further pressure India, the Chinese may start damming it too. Transnational rivers, by the virtue of geography, invoke intense geopolitical tension. But one thing that is often overlooked are the lives of the people those are actually impacted by these. The waters of the three eastern rivers has been a great gift for states like Rajasthan, Punjab, Haryana and Madhya Pradesh, and the irrigation channels and dams built after the Indus Water Treaty had a great influence towards India's Green Revolution. But that is not the whole story, as the people of Kashmir and Ladakh had always depended on the western rivers for agriculture, and thus the treaty has become a burden for them. The people of this region can no longer reliably depend on these rivers, and this has had dire effects on the economy and livelihood of the people. In 2016, the then Jammu and Kashmir State Assembly had unanimously, across political divides, demanded a comprehensive revision to the treaty. But these fell on deaf ears, as India derives great military advantage from it. This treaty and the unchecked use of Himalayan waters throughout the course of the rivers are also having many unforeseen consequences. Climate change and rapidly depleting glacial cover on the mountains, along with unrestrained irrigation, is decreasing the flow of these rivers year after year. So much so that large parts of northern Gujarat, which previously came under the Indus River Delta, are now becoming dry. This is resulting in saltwater intrusion into many farmlands, making them useless. While it is said that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting, sometimes our acts can come back to haunt us, and what we do to others can just as well be done to us by a new enemy. With changing climates and demographics, there is still time for radical action, and maybe a few years down the line, when we go through these dangerous roads again, I can talk about just the beauty of these rivers without worrying about if these will even keep on flowing.